British Strongman Coaching, Josh Lancaster and Joe Daglish. So we're going to cover log lift 101. So first of all, we're going to analyze each other's technique and be really critical. So we're going to cover Joe's a heavy rep max at a comp, a heavy single and how his technique changes. Then we're going to cover mine, heavy log for reps at a comp, and then a heavy single in training. And then the next section, we're going to move on to covering the different aspects of the lift. So we're going to give you 2 top tips for your log clean, 2 top tips for your strict press, 2 top tips for your push press, 2 top tips for your jerk. And then we're going to move into analyzing some videos that have been sent in, and then move on to some questions that have also been sent in. So if there's any questions as we go along, just shoot into the chat and we'll address them towards the end. Let's get into it. So we're going to go Joe's. Can you see that now, Joe?
Yeah, I can see it, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we're going to have a look at Joe's technique here. So to provide some context here, we're looking at this is the Arnold's under 80 comp, was it? What did you do? 100 for 5, was it?
Yeah, so it was 100 kilos on a wooden log. That's right. That's the end of the set. So we're starting again now. Flash had just gone before me. Now he'd done 7. So in terms of pacing, I felt like I could get 6. As sort of like a pre-comp sort of goal. So I knew that I'd have to go really quick to try and get 7. I ended up getting 5 because obviously I've rushed it a little bit. You see at the end of the moment, but it's a little bit of a messy set. But I'm strong enough to sort of grind them out. I think it actually gets better as it goes on. So that's my best rep so far. I think that's rep 4. Whereas the first reps 1 to 3 were pretty messy.
So in terms of percentages, you'd say roughly it was about 100 divided by.
So that's a good rep again.
Yeah, you'd maybe want to be aiming towards 6 or 7, really, wouldn't you? At least 6, because I usually project off a 5 rep max at around 85% 1RM, which would have you about 117.5, which right at that time you'd fancy yourself for more than 120, wouldn't you, for sure?
Yeah, I think around that time in training, because this is just prior to OSG, we were doing loads of logs. I've set as 115 for reps from the chest. So I think I did about 126 log in training. So
yeah,
you're right,
you did. We'll move on to that in a minute because I've got the video linked up next.
And you can see on that the 6 rep here. What kills me is the clean. I think if it landed the clean a bit better, I would have definitely got the press. So when it replays it in a second. But we talk about sort of energy expenditure. These little mistakes that I'm making on every single rep, will ultimately cost me the sort of, that's definitely the 6 rep anyway.
So let's just flick over to your 126 PB that you referred to, and then we'll have a look at this positionally and how and then we'll refer back to the other stuff. So for me, technically, it felt great, didn't it? Because position.
Yeah, you can tell by my reaction. Yeah. How good it felt.
It's excellent. So we'll go back to this other one and then we'll flip between the 2 and then we'll analyze it a little bit. So in fact, let's positively reinforce what you're doing on this one, because it is actually pretty much textbook in terms of a lot of the positions, and especially relevant for most people listening, because most people watching this are going to be log clean and push presses usually. Yeah. So if you watch this technique right from the front, the only thing that I would pick at would be the extension on the drive of the that bit of the clean. As you're exploding up with the hips, I feel like you can just get a little bit more out of that ankle extension. But a thing that you do magically well on this, which you and Tim do brilliantly well, and it's something that I've been trying to replicate recently in training myself, is as you do the pick, instead of just staying flat-footed on the pick, you hop up onto your toes. So you're getting, when you're lapping it here, that's just beautiful, because at that moment there, when it's in your lap, right, you can imagine how that feels, Joe. And it just feels like you're getting it, like it's weightless. So you're getting a breather in. So you're almost starting your lift with the weight at the hip. Whereas a lot of people who stay flat-footed on the pick they've actually used a bit of energy expenditure, and they're starting to feel that whole weight of the log. Does that make sense?
100%. I think just prior to this phase, we've been doing lots of log from the floor for bumper plates for OSG, and that's something that we sort of brought in there. We knew the pickup was going to be difficult, so to be aggressive with it, and we just sort of, I don't know where we got that little hop from, but it's just naturally sort of developed itself. But I think the big advantage of it is that the log then lands slightly higher up in that lap position than it would do if you force that sort of pickup. I can't remember who it was, but I remember
Tim does it really well.
Somewhere.
Dean McVie does it really well.
Yeah, Dino does it really well. Yeah, I think he might even change his hand position as well. But I remember seeing somewhere about that sort of pickup needs to be, light. It needs to be the easiest part.
Yeah.
When you're 300 kilo deadlifters, that 100 kilo, 120 kilo, 130 kilo log pickup should be, it shouldn't waste any energy to get it up to that lap position. And some people you see, and they're almost fried by the time they get it into the lap.
Yeah. So the bit that I'm being critical of is the extension in the hip drive here. The hip drive looks pretty good, but
yeah, I don't really get up off. My heels don't really come off the floor there.
Yeah, you're missing out. So that top bit of getting it into the rack position is the less you use your lower body potential, the more you're going to use that upper body to finish it off. And that's like the resource that we need when when you're grinding out that last couple of millimeters on that press.
Yeah.
And also that, like, to maintain that strength in the rack as well as your dip. If the dip's slightly off, that upper body strength is your error margin. Yeah. So,
and I think if we were to look back at a video of me logging sort of 2 or 3 years ago, I think that's the thing that I've improved the most is that rack position. Even though I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's loads better. The elbows are up. You can see the barrel of the log.
This is it. Look at the press. And just look
how the rack doesn't change in the dip. That's the big thing that Tim got way before me, and it took me a while to get him. But from watching him, that when I dip down, the rack position and the angle of the log doesn't change at all.
Yeah, and that's the big
thing. That's the thing. If you can crack that.
Yeah, and that's relevant whether you're a push presser, push jerk, split jerk. The dip and drive, which we'll cover more as we go along, is got to be exactly the same. And you watch guys all the way up to elite level, and the lifting like the top opens, the pros and stuff, and just be critical and watch that kind of as they begin even if the dip's pretty good, the rack might be pretty good, the dip might be pretty good, but just slow mo and look, like, tune in your eye when they begin the drive. And I would say most people are failing to control that log and stopping the roll forward, and it's only subtle, but if it's there, it's significant, and that is only going to get magnified as the load goes up.
Is that in the dip you're saying?
Sorry, not the dip. The drive. Yeah. So as you drive out of the hole, you'll see on the one that we do a mine in a bit, like you can see it start to roll, and just be a way to fix this yourself, like people self-coaching, video from the side, draw like exactly the side, draw a line through the center of the pins down to midfoot, and then in your rack position, make sure the middle of the pins is over midfoot, and then check out the bottom of the dip. Are you still in the same position? And if you are, great. But just see what happens when you start the drive. It's the same principle on dumbbell. It's the same principle on axle. Like a lot of people who kind of have a really good rack position and a pretty good dip, and they're aware of it, and they're still kind of worried about, like, they can't work out why they're failing in front. It's often because of this drive. And if people think that why can I do the dip but not the drive, it's because the dip and the driver should be exactly the same movement. They should be moving the load vertically. But the problem is the dip is eccentric. So you're using your muscles as brakes on the way down, basically. And then the drive is a concentric. So depending on what you read, like, you can be up to around 40% stronger in the eccentric of every movement. So basically, it's not necessarily that you're an idiot, like kind of ignoring like what you should do. It's actually, it's going to cost you a lot more energy to to drive up in exactly the same position that you've just demonstrated controlling on the dip. And that's just because of like eccentric versus concentric strength. And so if you think about that principle and how it applies to other lifts and stuff, then it's massively transferable. So that's showing there that 126, Joe, 126, and you could probably say more in the tank, really. Like if you got
but I know with the way that my overhead works is I could go in and do 127 and I could fail it 5 times because we're talking about it there. The margin for error, particularly when you've got a heavy weight in front of you, is so slim. You know, if I get my dip or my drive slightly off, I'll be pressing out in front, and I just won't have enough strength to push through all that way to lock the rep out.
So this is what's good about this, looking at this 1RM, because it's a great test and it's showing that when he gets everything right, because by the way, this is, as you can see, we've watched it loads of times now. It's a beautiful rep. It's a technically beautiful rep. I'd say like go and copy, like forget the weight. Even if you can lift more than this or whatever, just copy the positions, because that's as good as you're gonna get in terms of log clean and push press technique. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So basing it off that, I would say that roughly 80% as a 7 rep max. So 80% of 126 is about 100 or just above 100.8 or whatever. So realistically, you're showing that you've got the strength to do the 7 reps at that, going back to the 100 kilos here, which you wouldn't disagree with, actually.
I think my best effort in training was 6. I think Tim did a set of 7 in training, actually. So, you know, I know we're very similar.
Let's look at this through a slightly different lens now, like thinking about some of the points that we've just talked about. Let's look at Joe's set here, and it's a brilliant set because obviously we're all about results here, and realistically, Joe got 100 for 5 here. I think I'd gone before you and got 5, hadn't I?
Yeah,
Tim
you got
Flasher
5.
got 7,
Tim
and Tim had got 4, hadn't they? So. Anyway, like you'd sealed second place on this at the competition, which that's what it's all about. So, hats off. But looking at this set from a critical point, looking at the things that we talked about already on the 1RM, let's have a look at the pick. Let's have a look at the clean, the drive. So the pick's pretty good, yeah.
The clean is messy on every single rep.
The clean's messy in terms of positions, but also it's like lazy in terms of the drive. Like, look how flat-footed you are now. Even on rep 1 when you're full of beans, like your heels are glued to the floor. So even though you start your set and you feel strong for that weight, you're using more energy than you need to on that first rep right from the start. So let's have a look at the press. So your press has landed slightly wrong. You said that I said the clean was lazy. You said the clean was messy. So what do you mean by messy, Joe?
Well, a lot of the cleans, I'm staggering back, and then you're wasting time and energy trying to stabilize yourself. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily landing it right in the lap position either. That's a little bit better. But again, I'm going right back. That's I failed this one as a result. So let's have a look at the press part, which is obvious now. So we were saying how well on the 1RM thing that how well you were controlling that roll of the log. Whereas now, looking through that lens that we just talked about, look at the log rolling there, and you're still making the rep, but there, like you are making the reps there because your upper body's strong, like you are. That log is out in front of you, and you are using your triceps a lot more than what you need to, Which I mean,
obviously,
if that was 126 kilos, there'd be absolutely no chance it's moving. It's just it's lighter, isn't it? You're just forcing it up.
Joe,
eventually it's going to catch up with you.
Like
even 105, 110 kilos, I probably fail on.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. But like, put it to 110, and that rolls accentuated even more. And that can be enough to just complete, like you did on one of the reps where you failed and you dipped, and it just rolled too much. So, yeah, I would say double down on owning that rack position, owning obviously find the rack position first and the dip. And then when you can do that, have a look at the have a look at the drive and improving the drive, and look at it objectively from the side, and just be honest with yourself. Like, are the middle of the pins coming away from midfoot? Like, the further that they come away from midfoot at any part of the lift, the more costly in terms of energy expenditure you are, and the more you're robbing yourself off kilos. So you get better skill wise at maintaining this. Hey, a little thing to just a little note to kind of make Joe feel a little bit better maybe about this set. But what was tough about this, Joe, and this is a really, really relevant thing for people who compete in strongman, right? The log, the 126 log, the JT log, that's common. It feels great. Most importantly, you like people say, oh, the log was not good, the log was good, the log was very whatever. The most important variable with log is actually the exposure to the specific implement, because the handle width subtly different. Specifically, the diameter, the circumference of the log is basically, it's going to wrap it, like you starting from the same position, it's going to land in a slightly different position every time. So, and I remember at this comp, we were using a different, like a metal log backstage
in the warm up area. Yeah, I remember that. And the handles on that log on this wooden log are tiny.
That's it.
It's
so you came
very
out
different to what we use.
You came out to this blind, didn't you? And you didn't.
Yeah,
I just had to go for it. I think what I did, which I recommend to a lot of people, if they can, if they're using if you know that you're going to be using a different, say, log versus the in the comp versus the warm up area, like even if it's really heavy and it's set to comp weight, that's the problem. Is clean it, because if you clean it and pause in the rack, you can feel whether, am I landing in the right position? Like, could I actually drive from that position? And very often you'll find that, oh no, it felt horrendous, and you'll make a minor little tweak, like, but in terms of rotation of the handles, and you'll get it landing in a better position. So, and that's a thing that nobody, this is a thing that I see that annoys me quite a lot, where people give the blanket advice of, oh, you should tilt the handles down, or some people would say tilt the handles forward or whatever. Like, it's just bullshit basically, because it's impossible to say, because it changes from log to log, and what your ideal start angle, Joe, in terms of where you're starting to clean from, is going to be subtly but significantly different from mine. Yeah,
definitely.
So because of like the length of your torso, etc., that basically the distance the log has to travel on your torso is going to be like significantly different from person to person. So, and that's going to be the most important thing in terms of rack position. And remember, the rack position is the prerequisite to the dip, to a decent dip, to the drive, before you've even thought about push pressing and jerking and stuff. So hopefully people can see this breakdown and see Joe's technique here. And even though the two very good sets, that hope you can agree that he could probably do significantly better if he tidies up those kind of technical things, and hopefully you can see there's 4 or 5 glaring things there. Even though it's in an under 80 comp at Arnold, you finished on the podium technically, like, it's a great result. Hopefully you can see that if you're prepared to analyze yourself, you can see these holes. And Joe, you're probably seeing things there that next log session you're going to be thinking about. Do you know what I mean? Like,
definitely,
yeah. So let's move on to the next thing. So let's analyze my technique. Yeah, and I'll let you rinse me. So can you see here? So this was, so a little bit of context. This was, what was it, BNSF North qualifier last year. So this was 90 kilos for 13 reps, I think, in 75 seconds. Yeah. What do you think, Joe?
Let's have a little look. I mean, you talk about the angle of the pickup, don't you? You're literally just picking it up at wherever it lands there. I know you're working on speed. You got 60 seconds. I think did Sam Martin, he did a set of 14, was it?
Yeah.
So you're going as fast as you possibly can.
You
It's
see
like a
it
power
as in,
clean, isn't
like
it?
I'm getting tired here, and I'm not,
Yeah.
and I'm where I know that my upper body will be kind of fatigued. I can imagine how I feel there, and I'm missing out that easy opportunity of just popping up onto the toes. Like I'm doing it, almost like a half arse rep basically in terms of the clean. So a thing from knowing myself, it's not a very good angle this, to be fair, and it's a legit set. It's a really good set. Like obviously I've lifted a lot heavier, but in terms of execution at a, like Joe, the pressure's on when you're doing like a high rep, when you're doing
Yeah,
even
100%. Yeah.
even that set of 5 that you did it, like the pressure's on anything above 3 really, I think, because
Particularly
you
with
miss moves.
overhead, because the margins are so fine. With
Yeah.
deadlift or something like that, you can kind of get away with it with just a bit of brute strength. If your line's sat, particularly on a rep event, not so much of a max, but if your line's slightly out on deadlift, yeah, you can grind it out a little bit like you can with a log, but the margins are a lot finer.
Yeah. So a thing that you can't see very well on this one, that if say you were really critical of me and you followed my stories and stuff that I put up on like my log sessions, a thing that's really clear is on my right side. You can't see from this angle. I'll put the other one up. But basically on my right side in the rack, we'll just talk about the press or the jerk or whatever. In the right side in the rack, I am clearly weaker, and the elbow wants to drop on the right side before anything else. You can probably see it better from this angle, even though it's a pretty good set here. But you can actually see how the log, like looking from the front, the log is. Just look at the log in the rack, Joe, in terms of it's
Slanted, isn't it?
Yeah, it's slanted. It's way over to that right side. And to be fair, this is actually a good rep that I've picked out. Probably should have shown I think I went 133 afterwards and just completely failed it.
10 times.
And to be fair, I think I may have failed 125 before that. And the thing what you'd see, the thing where I fail is out in front, but this right side drops, and I think it's a couple of things. It's the not quite as strong on this right side, which obviously may be down to a number of things, such as, like, say, I've done a lot more dumbbell on the left side, for instance. I feel a lot stronger on the left side now in external rotation, blah 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 blah. But it's absolutely fine when I'm doing, like, say, bilateral overhead position. So, like, say, when I feel like do like a push press overhead or a jerk or whatever, like, I feel like I could probably hold 170, 180 overhead once it's there pretty equally. But it's just in that rack position, this external rotation strength, if you will, that's basically, I don't have as much strength this side when that dips slightly wrong to kind of get me out of jail, if you will. This is a good thing to think about, kind of strength and technique, where we want to kind of always, obviously the gold standard is bring them together, and that's what we want to do, is improve people's technical lifting whilst they're working through a program where they're getting really, really strong in terms of force production. That's where the magic happens. Yeah. So where am I going with this? So basically, like, if your technique breaks down a little bit on every lift, the margin for error that you've got is from, like, I believe, is from how strong you are. I.e., like, say, for instance, you're like, go back to the Arnold thing. You just said it, right? And your upper body strength got you kind of like imagine that was me and my log had rolled as much as yours. I've failed. Yeah.
No,
Whereas
agree,
you had that strength to kind of muscle it through. Yeah. So basically, I'm saying you can see that I don't have it so much at that right side, and it doesn't look so bad on this particular set, but my left side in terms of my left side in terms of hip external rotation is stronger. So basically on my dip, as a dip, that left side opens a lot better than the right side. The right side doesn't often collapse. My right foot often collapses in, my knee goes in or whatever. And that's just enough to positionally collapse me down that right side. So technically that's something that I address, that I look to address, going like with kind of pause work, in terms of improving the technique. So even just being aware of, like, say, taking, like, knowing where you fail is a really, really powerful thing to do, because that's where you can kind of, all your warm-ups and stuff, in my opinion, should be geared towards improving that position. You know, like, say, for instance, if your logs rolling forward, Joe, like in your warm-ups, maybe even do some, like, say, pressing from the chest with like extra pauses from the rack, pauses in the rack. Get that rack position feeling really, really good. Whereas someone like me, if I feel that, say, I'm dipping and this right side's collapsing out, I might do stuff like, say, well, I'll do stuff like technically, like pausing at the bottom of the dip, really, 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 really focusing on squeezing on that right side and getting the rotation out, and same on the upper body in the rack position and the lower body in terms of the hips. But also it can direct your assistance work, your strength work, in terms of like, obviously from side to side I've got an imbalance there where I might be wanting to kind of, if I develop this right side a little bit more, or do an extra set on my right side, you know, with what I won't go into specifics, but that's going to address that imbalance. Does that make sense, Joe?
Definitely, mate. Yeah.
So a thing that you can see on my technique here, when especially on the split jerk, is when I'm getting close to a max, or like doing a heavily fatigued set, you'll see. Can you see the cursor?
Go on, move it around.
I'm moving it around. No, maybe
No.
not. But basically, you see that. Oh wait, it doesn't matter. But if you just look at my right arm, so the arm on the left side, right, as I'm overhead, that's having to press out a little bit, isn't
You
it?
can see it working a lot harder than the other one. It's almost shaking under the pressure.
Exactly. Whereas you look at my left side,
arm just locked out, and
it's just, yeah, exactly. So a lot of this is where a lot of people make the error of thinking that it's tricep strength. In my opinion, that this isn't the problem here. It's already lost before I get to the lockout. So a lot of people will be thinking about, right, well, strengthen the triceps on that right side and it'll even out. Whereas actually, if we could video this from the side, or a few different angles, you'd be able to see that it's actually the rack and the dip where that right side is collapsing down. So basically that left side that's locking out easier, if you looked from that side and went really, really critical, what I said about center of the pins through mid-foot, you'd see that it's going up in a good line, and it's traveling pretty well. And that's why that lockout's easy, because it doesn't have to do much work because the line's good. Whereas you look on the other side and you'll see that as I begin that drive, the log on that right side has dropped. It's not only dropped lower in terms of my shoulder, but it's a little bit out in front. And because it's out in front, much like you when you're getting yourself out of the jail on the presses when the logs rolled with both your arms on the 100 for 5 set, that right side's having to work a little bit harder. So I've given you these two examples here. Me and Joe are good examples because we're pretty good at log in the lanes that we compete in. It's a reasonably good event for us, both max and for reps. So I think it's good to demonstrate us both, because I think Joe technically is a fantastic push presser, and I would say technically I'm a very good split jerker. So, but hopefully you can see these flaws that I'm pointing out to myself, and you can see the flaws that Joe had on that set. So let's move on to the next section. So see if we've got any comments on that. So Joe Schofield says, boys, because he saw himself on that first vid.
He did, yeah.
Let's move on to, so let's just do a little recap. So let's go back to just me and you, Joe. So log clean, 2 tips. You give me one tip, and I'll give you another tip. Quick fire.
Well, I spoke before about making sure that the pickup is the easiest part of the log clean, making it, sure it doesn't waste any energy, and getting it as high as possible, up that torso. I also hear a lot of people talk about the breathing. That's when I get my last breath in. So big breath during that clean. During the pickup, should I say?
Yeah, during the pick, yeah.
So big breath during the pickup, and then I'm holding my breath until I've pressed out.
Yeah. I think this is a magic one, Joe. What you've just said. It's something that, like I said, that I've transitioned to recently, and what a difference it makes in terms of, you feel like you're starting your lift at a point higher up, basically, don't you?
Yeah.
You feel like you're starting your lift. So in terms of like time under tension, you're significantly reducing it, and it's one of those things that if you're starting out, if you're a beginner listening to this, you're probably going to be best just focusing on controlling the rack position on the press, because that, with most beginners, is actually just going to be you're going to go to the log and it's going to feel alien in this position. You're not even going to be you're going to feel that the pickup feels pretty easy. The clean feels easy, but it's controlling this position that feels awful. So I find that this is actually stuff, like, especially on the clean, that you probably value a lot later in your kind of strongman career, where basically you're getting to the point where your technique's pretty good, but you're looking for the fine margins, and you're looking for these little 1% here and there. And that's a thing that it may not, it's not a kind of thing that's going to put 10 kilos on your log, but it's going to make any given training weight feel a little bit easier. So give that a try. And then the thing that I'd add, the second tip, would be just making sure you're extending up onto your toes. And I was gonna say. Yeah, well, that's it. And it's so simple. And probably the simplest way to think about this, assuming that your push press technique is pretty good, look at your push press technique and pause your video when you're push pressing, and look at that position. Look at your best push presses and look at your sets that felt the easiest on any given weight of push press, and just pause at the top of the drive. And most of you will be in a pretty good position where your ankles are extended, your heels are off the ground. You like, if you're wearing shorts, you'd see your calf definition as much as you possibly could. Your knees are locked out, your hips are locked out. So try and replicate this position as you're driving up from the clean. A thing that really helps me get better at this, extending up onto the toes, is actually just going lighter with the log and actually cueing myself to relax my arms and just go, right, imagine you've got no upper body tension to help you whatsoever. Imagine you've got no arms, they're just pieces of string with hooks on the end. Right, now let's see how you're going to get that log to your shoulders, because you can't pull with the arms whatsoever. You've got to drive. And I find that with a lot of people, will start that like immediately, they'll just get it and they'll just get that log flying. So let's move on to log strict press, Joe. So 2 tips for log strict press.
The angle of the log in that rack position. We talk a lot about that before in terms of where we're going to land that log, but we obviously everyone's going to be different depending on their levers. But for me, I want to be able to see inside the barrel of the log. I want handles sort of tilted up. I want my elbows nice and high, and then I can press from there. If obviously the angle of the log is down, very likely you're going to press that in front, which is going to make it really difficult.
Cool. So you're talking from how your technique could change from a strict press to a push press.
I think you could get away with it more on a push press, with your handle of your log being a lot flatter than you could on a strict press.
Yeah. So I'll build on this, right? So context is key.
So log strict press. So me and Flash have done a recording that I haven't published yet, and we talked about we talked about log strict press and technique and stuff, and I'll attach it to this somehow. But basically, context is key, and we'll have I think we came to the agreement that we'll have some people that should maybe be doing the log strict press as their main variation at comp, and then others that should be looking at push pressing. So let's talk about the log strict press from the two different contexts. So the first one being that you said tilting, getting your hands right. So basically, you're talking about putting the log in a more optimal position for your upper body to produce force and it to be effective for moving the log. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas what I would say, so I suppose what I'm saying is recognizing that you decide whether you are trying to maximize your log strict press, i.e., are you going to use it at comp? If you want to look at somebody who's really good at this, look at Flash's comp set that beat Joe. That 100, I think he put on Instagram it's 105 for 7, but it wasn't. It was 100. So it was, but he did 100 for 7, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But recognize that the technique in terms of your rack position to optimize for a strict presser is going to be very different to a push presser. Yeah. So because basically you put in for somebody who's maximizing your strict press, you want to be in a position that, like we say, you're putting in your upper body in that best position to produce force. Whereas for somebody who push pressing or jerking, say for instance me, if I'm looking to do log strict press to transfer over to my jerk, say for instance, like I'm wanting to train log, but my knees are a bit sore. I'm not really wanting to do any dips, but I'm wanting to build up that exposure in the rack and just get some transfer to my main lift. So I think what's going to be more transferable to my log to my log jerk is actually like copying the same rack position that feels really good and really cemented when you go to apply leg drive to the log. But if you try and produce force there in terms of your upper body, it very often feels horrendous. So like my kind of jerk rack position or push press rack position, I feel like my arms are in such a poor position to produce force. But with my technique, I'm maximizing the leg drive. Yeah. Does that make sense, Joe?
100%. Yeah. 100%.
So context is key, and just think about what's more valuable to you. Like, what are you going to do if you've got say you were doing a max log at a comp, or you're doing basically a comp that's doing you about 5 rep max log weight? What technique would you use if you had to turn up tomorrow? Would it be strict? Would it be push press? Would it be jerk? And I would say if it's going to be push press or jerk, and you're looking for ideal transfer on the strict press, mimic that rack position. If you're looking to do strict press at the comp, then obviously like replicate that position. But just respect the fact that they're subtly but significantly different. And that's why I see quite a lot of people will do like a good phase of strict pressing, get really strong in their upper body, and then they'll go back to transfer to push press, and you can see that the struggling and very often lifting similar, and you can see that they go to apply the leg drive, and this log rack roll that we talked about before. If you do a big phase of like log strict press, and you get better at maximizing that lift in terms of your strict press, and then you use exactly the same rack position and then go and apply leg drive to it, your legs are just going to accelerate you into a poorer position, basically. So I think if you want to optimize I suppose just recognize that the two different things. So what I would say for someone like me, where I would use it's something that I've been working on recently, actually, where I've been doing strict press with a view of not necessarily transferring directly to the way that I jerk and push press and stuff, but actually to build strength in a more extended position, like more head back position, more kind of getting used to using my upper body for when stuff like inevitably comes up, like stone press, sandbag press, block press, even like Viking press a lot, where getting comfortable in producing force with your upper body.
That's it. Are you using strict press as an accessory, or are you using it as your main way of pressing that log?
Yeah. So
That's the
hopefully
question you need to ask
we've
yourself.
provided a few different scenarios there. And again, context is key. Log push press, 2 top tips, Joe.
Vertical torso in the dip. So this is the thing that I was probably the most suffered from the most. When I would fail a log, it would be because of the angle of my torso. Now, obviously, when you got a heavy log in that rack position, say, I don't know, 110, 120 kilos, whatever it is, all relevant to you, it wants to bring you forward. So you've got to fight hard to make sure that when you're dipping, we talked about filming from the side before, that your torso angle is remaining completely vertical. And then again, obviously, when we're driving out of that the bottom of the hole, it's again remaining completely vertical. That way, all the power should be going up rather than out in front or behind. And hopefully that should help with a log press.
Yeah. So a tip to I'm just going to hammer home what Joe's just said, because this is the most important thing in terms of most people's log press, is owning that rack position and and learning how to apply leg drive. Assuming that you're not a strict presser, you're a push presser. Because you strict presser, it's going to be slightly different. But assuming that most of us are going to be push pressing or jerking, when you go to jerk, it's exactly the same principle. The dip and drive should be exactly the same in the rack. But yeah, to reiterate what Joe says, that vertical torso. So imagine you've got to know what this feels like, and this is often surprises people. Like next time you go into the gym, go to the back wall and put your shoulders against the wall, your butt against the wall, a little bit of a gap at your lower back, and just dip down without losing the shoulder and the butt contact. And what you're going to feel there in terms of your legs is very often very different to what you think you're doing when you're trying to apply your leg drive. So this error of people very often say, keep your elbows up. And I'm not a fan of that cue whatsoever. I find that if you do what Joe says and learn to dip with the vertical torso, the elbows will take care of themselves. Like they won't want to go anywhere else, because they'll be in the
because you've not given the log a chance to go forward as a result. The elbows are going to go down as soon as your body direction of your torso goes forward. Then that weight of the log is just going to go down with it, and hence why your elbows will go down. I feel like you went and watched any comp, and if you could play a game as you watch people log press, if you were to pause them at the bottom of that dip, I bet 9 times out of 10 you could call whether they're going to get that rep or not. Me and Tim in training, when we do it, we're looking at each other. We know if they're going to get the rep or not by just looking at that dip.
Yeah, or if you can't tell by the dip, just let them come 1% out of the drive, and that'll highlight it. If they haven't lost it already in the dip, highlight in the drive. Here's a challenge for people listening and people watching this. Think about your 10 favorite log pressers on Instagram, or 10 people who do log. Go and watch the technique and see how even the guys that are good, new to it, whatever, anybody posting log on Instagram. And feel free to call me out when I'm doing log press, or call Joe out. Why? Just have a look. And I think it's one of those things that if you're understanding what we're putting over here, you'll start to see things through a completely different lens, and it'll just make complete sense to you. So this will be a good way of you learning it, instead of just brushing over what we just said. Just scroll through Instagram and have a look through some people log pressing. Pick some novices,
Luke Saltman's a good example, I think, of somebody who controls his dip so well, and the angle of his torso just remains completely the same.
Yeah,
if we could, go and watch some of his log pressing.
Yeah, pick some of the guys from OSG, pick some of the guys from like Giants Live, and I think you'll be shocked when you'll see this mistake highlighted, and you're like, oh my god, these guys are logging 200 kilos, and this error is creeping in. What about if they fixed it? So yeah, let me know in the comments if you might manage to do this, and yeah, great. So last thing to add to that, a way to measure it is you can either put like a little focal point on the log itself if you want a video from the front. So in the past, I've put like stickers on, or you could put like a chalk mark, and you could just basically say, right, when I press, a slow-mo my press, is that line on there, is it coming forward, or is it staying the same? And the gold standard, which is very, very tough, it shouldn't be moving down as you start the drive. Yeah. So we used to have those stickers on. Do you remember, Joe?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the
stickers on the middle. And honestly, when you did a bad rep, you could just see the sticker moving towards you, and that's just a really simple way. And video from the side, and just slow mo your next. Oh, go to your last set of log. Oh, sorry. No, video from the side, your next working set of log. And then just slow-mo it, video, and just look. Pause at the different positions. Pause in the rack. Pause at the bottom of the dip. Pause 10% at the start of the drive, and see what story it's telling you, because that'll tell you everything that you need to know.
I think these mistakes often come from when people rush that dip or panic, maybe. I don't know, but don't be scared to control the dip. You've got so much power and strength there. You need to work out how you're going to utilize that. And controlling that dip is how you're going to utilize it. You're just basically putting yourself in a position to create some momentum and some power. That's all you need to do.
Yeah. Another good cue for that, like you're just saying, control that dip, or slow it down on the way down. Must have been in 2017 or 2018 at TSG. You know, I was coaching someone at a comp there, and it was lot of overhead or whatever, and Phil Roberts shouted, "Slow down, fast up," and that made a lot of sense.
Basic, yeah, makes so much sense.
Like it's so basic, but basically go slow down to make sure that you're hitting a perfect dip, and then once you've hit that perfect dip at the bottom position, you're beginning the drive, then explode with the drive. And because what you should always prioritize is positions over speed and intent and power. You should layer the speed and intent and power on top of the positions. Whereas what Joe's saying about, like, say, when you're like kind of going heavy and kind of, I don't know what you said, like psyching yourself out or trying too hard or whatever, that's very common. Like everybody does it. Everybody does it because logically you've done your last set and you thought, shit, that felt hard. So logically, what do? Like you try and produce a little bit more tension and try 2% harder, which if your positions are slightly out, that error is just going to get magnified. So actually stripping it back a little bit. And so another good thing that's just popped in my head, I might as well say it. So the thing that's really popular with weightlifters in terms of weightlifting programming, is wave loading within sessions, within kind of training phases or whatever, where basically they might do, like, say, a light triple, and then go a bit heavier for a triple, and then go a bit heavier again for a triple, and then drop it down. And they might start a little bit higher than the first triple, but basically do like a wave and then drop, wave and then drop. And each time they get to the top of the wave, they're trying to go that little bit higher. But what they're doing here is you're kind of offsetting that thing of when the weight's going up and you're thinking, oh shit, that last set was pretty hard, or that last rep of that last set was pretty hard. If I'm going to do the same again and I'm fatigued now from that set, that kind of, if there was any errors creeping in there, they're just going to get magnified by that extra bit of amount you trying hard for the next set. Whereas dropping the weight back down again, right back down to the bottom, can kind of reset that effort. You know that you can just chill out again and focus on the positions. And very often that's why very often I've taken that approach where, I don't know if you've ever done it, like, say, it might work for you on, like, say, you know, can you ever remember doing like split jerk from the blocks on the axle like a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And what's very common on there is like you'll do one, and then you might miss a few, and then you drop it down, and then you might build back up again, and then go heavier than the one that you failed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So don't be afraid to do that. Like as a thing. If you feel like you're failing not because you're not strong enough, but because you're trying a bit too hard, like just drop the weight back down again and build back up. It's so simple. But I find that this is specifically relevant for overhead lifting, because especially overhead lifting where you're just doing the concentric, i.e. when you're doing, say you're doing a log EMOM and you're dropping from overhead, or you're doing your axle and then dropping from overhead. So you haven't got that eccentric fatigue. Like you don't feel like it either feels easy or you fail. Yeah. It's not like grinding out a squat or a deadlift or whatever. So yeah, try that approach with, and don't be surprised if you can go higher than what you did before. So log split jerk, 2 tips. I'm testing you here, Joe. Think about what we've just said here, right? And well, I'm just going to help Joe out. Like just reiterating the point.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Just reiterating the point that owning that like people,
the principles still remain the same, don't they? Ultimately,
exactly, yeah. So nail the dip and drive, right? When that log gets to your eye level, when that log gets to your nose level, and you freeze frame it, you should not be able to tell whether you're push pressing, push jerking, power jerking, split jerking, squat jerking, because the dip and drive should be exactly the same. Yeah. So where a lot of people go wrong with split jerks is they focusing on the footwork and landing mechanics of landing in this. Oh, where should my feet be? Oh, I feel unstable when I land, or my balance isn't very good. They're focusing on that receiving position, that they kind of switch off to the importance of the dip and drive and nailing that. So, and that is the where it's won or lost in whenever you're applying leg drive, push press, jerks, whatever. Like
I pulled a funny face when you asked me that question, because obviously, like my sort of experience of log split jerks is I haven't done it for years. But I'm thinking back to when the last time I tried it. Well, I still made the same mistakes of a push press in terms of I hadn't nailed that dip and that controlled vertical torso. So as soon as I went into try and doing a log split jerk, and you've got this heavy object in front of you, I was dipping down. Like you've nailed it on the head there in terms of focusing too much on the footwork for where I was going to be in sort of the next half a second, without actually thinking about that sort of vertical torso for the dip. And every time it just seemed to go forward, and I really struggled with that. So, but it makes such sense, and I'd be interested to try it again and to see what how it changed over the sort of last 2 years without even doing any practice on that, because my push press has got a lot better.
And then what happens from there is you go and land it, and then your balance is all out, and you're thinking, this is where a lot of people make the error. They think that the balance and the stability, split jerks aren't for me because I can't balance and my stability isn't good or whatever. Look, if you can move with, like, say, a 260 frame and you can do a 340 yoke, you're pretty strong in a split stance. Yeah, because like every step that you take is unilateral. You're absorbing force, like whatever. Yeah. Like you're good at producing force in that position. But the problem is that even though you're not so well visited in that position in terms of the context of landing a split jerk, you're giving yourself such a hard task because of the dip and drive being like, not only you're not like that well versed at landing in the split and exactly where you should be, but you're trying to catch something that's miles out in front because
that was exactly the problem.
But people think it's the footwork or the balance that's a problem. No, it's not. It's just because you're not nailing that jerk. So practically, what I would say to people who want to learn how to split jerk, what's a really good way to do it. Say, for instance, you wanted to bring it back in your off season as a bit of skill or whatever, and you're like, right, let's give it a go. What I would say, Joe, is instead of going straight back into it, we could do like, say, one bit of the session where you really focus on the push press and nailing the dip and drive, even maybe some like heavy dip and drives from the blocks or something with the log. So you're nailing that dip and drive, and you're making sure that that's strong and perfect and vertical torso, etc., regardless of the weight and fatigue. Yeah. And then pick an easier variation to where you don't have to think about the dip and drive, and you can just focus on the landing mechanics, where, like, say, even just doing an axle or a barbell and just practicing a barbell and axle split jerk to that. Because that's why, like, if you're using yourself for an example, Joe, like if we said, right, you could confidently just go up and do a 120 split jerk on an axle, couldn't you?
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be confident doing, say, 105 on a bar on a log, would you? Because
split jerk, no.
And it's just because of that control. So try that. And thing that I like, if you want to split it up even more, if you want to split it up into the dip and drive of the log, do the log dip and drives, like I've said, where you're practicing that vertical torso and applying leg drive maximally into it each rep, and then try jerk recoveries where you're completely taking the kind of the dip and drive out of it. And the added benefit of doing jerk recoveries, so look it up, just type it into YouTube or whatever, and it's basically starting with the implement at eye height, and you're taking out the dip and drive element, so you're practicing just the receive portion of it. So the advantage of doing this compared to just doing, like, say, a barbell split jerk with the say a barbell or an axle is the fact that you can go significantly heavier in terms of volume accumulation. So you can build up specific strength in the overhead position that you can hold on to any weight, but also you can really challenge yourself in that kind of split position and learn that'll give you loads during split jerk recoveries. It'll give you loads of feedback of where your feet should actually be, because you might be trying a position that feels pretty good with 50% of your max, but then, right, we'll try and stabilize 80% of your max overhead in that kind of split position, and you go and do that in the context of a split jerk recovery, and it might be as simple as, oh my goodness, if I move my foot out a little bit and a centimeter further forward, I feel infinitely more stable. Yeah. Then you learn that and then go and take it into the other stuff, and it's just so valuable.
And if you don't have access to like jerk blocks, anything like that, we did it with a yoke for a while, didn't we? Which worked really, really well. Saves a lot of time. Just set your yoke bar up really high and just recover on that. It's worked really well. So
brilliant. So let's move on to the next section where we're going to be covering some different topics. So we're going to go for, do you feel cueing, pushing the chest towards the sky, a more effective way to maintain a good rack and elbow position than cueing elbows high? What do you think, Joe?
Pushing the chest towards the sky. Never heard that cue before, have you?
I don't. No, I haven't, but I can imagine it, and I much prefer this, right? Because I feel like that a lot of people make the error is the kind of, they're in this horrible, disgusting rack position that they go and try and apply leg drive to, and they're just going to get rolled and mauled. Yeah, that we can all imagine. And someone's shouting at them, elbows up, and you can see him. You can imagine them quivering in that rack position, trying like this to keep their elbows up. Yeah, it's the same on dumbbell. You see it, people wrestling to keep that center line. You see it on axle and barbell. People trying to. You say, how often do you see people holding an axle and a barbell and they're like this, trying to get their elbows up, and they're going to play, like they're not going to be able to maintain that position.
Yeah, they've lost it before they even attempt to press it, haven't they? In that position, yeah.
Yeah, and what you're doing with if you're thinking about elbows high and actually pushing the arms up, in my opinion, is
give yourself a better torso angle.
Well, you're
bring
doing
your shoulders back.
If you're doing the pushing the chest towards the sky. That's definitely what you. I agree with that, and
I think it brings it back to what you said before about using the wall to to experiment with that vertical torsos, and you said you'd be surprised at how much further back you think you have to go than you think you were. I suppose that's a similar sort of even sat in this chair, I can push my chest towards the sky, and all of a sudden my torso feels, my posture's a lot better than
that's it. Look, this is elbows up, and we talk about midfoot all the time, blah 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 blah. Yeah, imagine where the center of the log pins are. And the difficulty with any log is keeping that log in that position, because we go here and it's still very often ever so slightly in front. So we want that log literally as far back that way as possible. So if you're just thinking, you see a lot of people and they're getting no upper, like getting fancy with the words, up thoracic spine, upper segment of the spine. You see a lot of people and they'll almost be flexed like that. They're not getting any extension whatsoever. And they'll be in this flex position, and then they're trying to keep they've got this job of trying to keep their elbows up like that. Whereas you think of this thing of pushing the chest towards the sky, you can do that and keep the arms redundant, which is a thing that I promote, is like actually find a position where your arms are relaxed, because then it'll help you cue how to keep that vertical torso, because you're getting that immediate feedback if that log's in the wrong position, because you're just going to drop it. But the cueing the chest up towards the sky is engaging your lats. It's giving you more kind of tension through irradiation through the body, because you're creating more core stability, blah, 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 blah. But positionally, it's getting you that upper spine extended. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's better cue then. Definitely.
So, and then therefore getting that log, that basically you're giving yourself an easier task to keep that log close to the center line throughout the lift. So yeah, I think it's fantastic cue. And I suppose adding a bit of sauce onto that, like cueing, getting comfortable with, if you watch really, 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 really good log lifters, like you'll see that they've got very often got great thoracic extension, but also really good cervical extension. So basically getting the neck right back and being comfortable there. Yeah. And that's something that I've worked on, because I know that, right, well, actually, like when I started off, my neck was really stiff and I struggled to get it in there. And it was like, well, if I can get my neck right back there and be comfortable and be strong in that position, then the log is going to be in an infinitely better position. It's going to be easier to maintain close to the midfoot. And you're just going to unlock kilos without having to get stronger, basically. So, yeah, great question. Would you make any positional or movement pattern changes based on the handle position of a log being wider or narrower? Have you noticed anything with this, Joe?
Wider, so like the thickness of it, the girth as such, or do you mean the length?
Well, let's talk about both, I suppose.
I think definitely if we talk about the length of a handle, so for example, I've seen people adjust the hand pickup on the actual pickup of the log. So I know when we did OSG last year, we had, and you know, it's often the case in many comps, you are doing log from the floor, from bumpers. And what we found is that we obviously, you imagine your log handle's tilted. If you're picking up the end nearest to you, the pickup was a lot easier. But you wouldn't want to press the log there. So, this is where that little jump came from, actually, from picking up the log handles there and then adjusting my hand position when I get to the sort of the top end of the lat position prior to the actual sort of squat phase of the clean. For me, I've always pressed it in sort of just this is not something I really thought about, but probably the center part of the handle. I presume if you're pressing on either end, it's going to be affecting, if you're pushing it outwards or behind you. In terms of the length, I've seen on a narrower handle, you've not got much choice, to be honest. Use that Arnold video we saw before. That handle was really narrow. The actual area to pick the log up there was really quite narrow and sort of claustrophobic compared to the JT log that we train on, which is really open. That covers that. You found the video?
Yeah, I was trying to find a video there.
But that sort of that hack of the pickup and changing your hand position, that came from the pickup height, should I say?
So you can't really say, "Oh, I've picked the wrong one. This is a fail," actually. But you can see what I'm actually doing on this, because this I suppose this is a good example, and this highlights what we were saying before about you can see. It's just the reason why I'm failing this. The clean looks powerful, positionally really good. You can just see that right side's dropping to the point where it's just dropping too far in front of midfoot. I haven't got the upper body strength to grind through that. And so if the line's out, I'm just dead, basically. But what I'm doing here, if you look, you can't really see, but you can see how as I pop up, I move my hands central. And as I'm picking that up, just to make, because 130 feels pretty hard on the pickup for me at the minute. So what I'm doing is I'm picking up the 130, the handles like right towards the back, which obviously isn't going to be a good position to press from. So I'm going into Joe's little pop-up technique into the lap. And then, can you see how when it's weightless?
Yeah, it's ever so, you can barely see it because it's that just quick.
Just watch now as I slide my hand. Yeah,
it's that point where the log is weightless as such at the end of the pickup. Is you've got that moment, half a second, if that, to change your hand position prior to it going down to the lap. You see some people where they pick it up and then they're spending sort of 3 or 4 seconds in the lap position, wasting time changing the hand position. That's not what we're saying. We want, picking up right close to you, top end of the handle, and then when the log's weightless, at the top end of the pickup, you can just quickly shift your hands down and get it, catch it almost. It is a catch into the center of the handle again for your clean and press.
And for anybody, if you mean in the other way, like say if you get a log and it's narrow versus wider than usual, so just think about it logically, right?
I thought the handle.
Well, it's ambiguous, isn't it? To be fair,
yeah.
But we can nail them both. You've nailed that first one. So the width. So for somebody who the wider you go with your hands, if you jerk, it doesn't make as much difference than if you're going to be using your upper body. Because if you think about it, you go significantly wider than, say, this neutralish position, you're not going to feel quite as strong in terms of producing force with the upper body. Yeah. If you've somebody who struggles with mobility, you may actually find that going for a wider handled log, when you get overhead, it feels more comfortable. Yeah, so that's like obviously an individual trade-off that you might consider. But if for someone if the handles are narrower, some people might actually find that, oh my goodness, they're in a stronger position to actually produce force with their upper body. So this might suit you if you're strict press or push presser. But I would say be careful. The thing that you're going to see, like say the handles are narrower than what you used to, you may be surprised at the mobility requirements for holding the overhead position. You might find your overheads a little bit more difficult or significantly more difficult to hold. So if this is something that affects you, so obviously you can't change the hand position on your log. The log handles are dictating how wide your hands are. So the major thing that you can promote is, well, Joe, let's do it now, right? Let's do a little demo here, right? Go from the side, get in this position here. I want you to kind of round at your shoulders, round forward like that, like slump.
Okay, the camera.
It don't have to be perfect, but slump, and then lift your arms overhead and hold with your elbow straight, right? And then go back down to the bottom position. Relax. Now focus on getting that kind of chest up or upper spine extension, and then go raise with the hands. And do you feel how the arms move freer when you've got a bit more extension?
Yeah.
So basically, you feel really stiff. But that's a thing that I'd focus on. If you were using like a narrow handled log and you're struggling with that overhead positioning a little bit, just making sure that you've got as much upper spine extension as possible, because that upper spine extension and scapular retraction is going to, or basically your shoulder blades coming a bit close together, is going to allow that shoulder to move a little bit more free. So if it's wider than usual, you might find that overhead position feels a little bit better, but don't panic if your kind of rack position feels a little bit heavier with a wider log. So using the principle that I've just said about your upper body isn't as in a good a position to produce force. So this means that your dip and drive is going to have to be more accurate. Yeah. Does that make sense, Joe? What I've just said?
Yeah. No, it does, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically you're going to have less to get you out of jail because your arms are in not as good a position to produce force. So hopefully we've answered that. So
it refers back to what you talked about before, mate, doesn't it? It's ultimately, this is why Strongman's so interesting, because every piece of kit that you're using, you know, is slightly different and testing you in you know, little ways that often we don't realise.
Yeah. So best ways to train the serratus anterior to unlock better rack positioning. So I would look at people like there's a guy called Eric Cressy who I would recommend, that he coaches a lot of baseball athletes and done it for absolute years, absolutely brilliant, and he's like he's absolutely fantastic at studying the practical implications of shoulder positioning and programming and stuff like that. He's just absolutely brilliant. So he talks a lot about, like, say, serratus anterior and like if you're getting symptoms of scapular winging and your scapula's fixed in position, your arms don't move freely, and blah 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 blah. For a lot of people listening to this, it probably just you'd be better googling it or getting onto a rehab professional, to be honest. But keeping it in simple terms, you attach under your armpit, and it's basically to this muscle. If it's weak, you might have symptoms of say, people might get stiff neck, people might get kind of crunching in the shoulders, and you're not sure what it's from. So if you're getting any of these symptoms, I'm not going to get scientific at all with this. If you get any of these symptoms, just look it up. It's worth a shot with that, saving you a bit of money on physio and rehab professionals and stuff. Just have a look at, say, serratus anterior strengthening or weakness, and there's some simple tests that you can do to test whether this area is weak. And if it's coming up that you've got a weakness there and you strengthen it, these symptoms of, like, say, your shoulders crunching because the position's slightly wrong, or your neck pain, you might be able to fix that just by strengthening this kind of often overlooked muscle. So if you don't get it fixed and you just crack on with it, then you can be increasing your risk of, like, rotator cuff injuries, strains, and stuff like that. So a simple little drill that you can do for to activate the serratus anterior that may help you with that log rack positioning would be getting, like, a mini band. You know, you see the ones that people often put around the knees or the hips or whatever to cue external rotation of the hips. You can do the same, but put it around your elbow or your forearm and go like that, to kind of cue the shoulder external rotation and activate the muscles in your upper back, blah 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 blah, and do that to switch those muscles on, and then grab, like, a foam roller against a wall and kind of press into the foam roller and reach up like that. And yeah, you'll be better just typing into YouTube or Google. But it's definitely something where if you have any of the symptoms that I've mentioned, or you ever get any of those, just look it up. It's worth strengthening an area that's often overlooked. So let's move on to the next thing. I noticed filming from front on the last set that my legs are in a really wide stance after the clean on the log. Should I try and stand narrower on the pickup? So great question. This is brilliant. So I would say that most people on log, over 90% of people, it's won or lost in the drive or basically controlling that rack position when you're applying leg drive. Yeah, regardless of whether you're jerking or push pressing. So most people focus on this and then work backwards from that. So taking that logic, I would say you want to be in the position that is basically your most powerful push press position. Yeah, in fact, think about, regardless of whether you jerk or push press, think about your most powerful push press position, because it's going to be universal. So work out this position. Look where your feet are when you do your push press, and then just chalk on the floor, chalk around your feet, and then take the guesswork out of it. Where your push press feels amazing, then when you go to settle for your log, park your feet in those chalk marks, and then learn how to clean from this position. Because the advantages that most of us are going to get from being able to transition immediately from receiving the clean to going into the dip of the press is like massively outweighs the advantage of that you're going to get from making the clean feel a little bit lighter. So
I think if you take it a step further, I'm sure you've done with this with us in terms of getting us to just jump vertically in a standing position. And that's probably a very similar position to what you would be in a push press. So think about where your feet are for that. They've said in the question a really wide stance. So I mean, you see some people logging with quite a wide stance. It's a really wide stance. Yeah, you're going to be just leaking energy, aren't you? Your clean might feel great, but it's not a powerful position to press from, is it?
That's it. And I can imagine, like, I can imagine somebody doing this, taking a really doing a really good clean, and then moving the feet in. And remember, think about where you're looking when you're moving the feet in. Your feet, you're guessing. You're guessing. You're going to be it's going to be hard to nail the same thing every single time. So I would say, yeah, just clean from that. Sacrifice a little bit of that comfort.
The only thing I could add is, depending on how wide they are, there is at the top end of that pickup, there is that millisecond again, just to shuffle feet in ever so slightly. But you're not going to be talking maybe more than sort of 5 to 10 centimeters, maybe 5 centimeters, even foot maybe, which isn't going to make much of a difference. But if you wanted a little bit of a wider pickup, and then when that log's weightless, just shuffling your feet in with a little hop. You've got basically one step either foot, haven't you?
That's it. Brilliant. I've never thought of that, Joe. But just like you do on your sandbag,
or when you lap a stone,
you get that little foot shuffling. So yeah.
But then again, like you said, the margin for error of making it exact. Are your feet in the right position? It's like anything. I suppose if you trained it, you could get it right. But
because look at it like this. Using this scenario, right? You receive that clean, and then you're moving your feet in significantly from that wide position. What are you doing with your breathing at that time, Joe?
That's it, yeah. Well, probably suffocating.
Yeah, exactly. Either suffocating or you're forced to take a breath. So to reiterate, we haven't talked about this today, but a thing that I advocate on, I've had good success myself at say getting better.
I know what you're going to say.
Go on, then you tell us. Go on.
I think you're going to say trying to get that log off your chest as quick as you possibly can. Something on those lines.
Yeah.
You might not have said that, but I think it's the same point that, time and attention, you want that. Once that log's in your rack position, you want to go. You don't want to waste time.
So how do you achieve that in terms of breathing? That's where I was going to go with it.
Well, for me, I don't breathe in the rack position.
Exactly. And that's what I promote. You're so look. You imagine that 126, Joe. I imagine in my PB 135, right? I get that a degree out, and I'm mauled, and I look like what? Why am I even trying that way? Yeah, but I land it perfect, and that when you've made that 126 by where you received it in the clean. Yeah, do you agree?
Yeah,
because you are so
well. I've got a chance here. I've got a chance. Got to go. And if I don't, or if I don't land it right, and I think, I'm going to have to do something special here, and ultimately, I'm probably not strong enough to grind that out at that sort of percentage. To be fair, it doesn't matter about my strength. It's relevant to everybody. If you're not landing that clean right and you're wasting time in the rack position, if that's sort of 100, 101, 105% of your max, there is very little chance you're going to be getting that. So you want to be wasting as little time as possible in that rack position. You want to go. Yeah, you're bringing your feet in. You're just wasting time, aren't you?
So that's a massive thing that I promote is breathing as late as possible. So I breathe as I'm. Massive thing that I say that I promote with breathing on every lift is trying to take the breath when you're not under tension. So these you've got a few little points on where Joe might take his breath. He might take his breath on the pop, wherever it's weightless. Yeah. So if you're taking a breath here with 126 kilos on you,
some people do, to be fair, and I would be interested to speak to those people and to see how they do it, because I know there is people that they do and they probably disagree with what we're saying, which is fine. But I think for what this question's asking, I just don't think it's necessary at all.
Yeah. So yeah, good one. I use split jerk for heavier reps on log. How should I split my reps up during training? Better to focus more on jerk technique to use in competition, or strict press, push press to focus more on strengths? So I'll answer this from a split jerk perspective. I would say, like, be objective and use as many quantifiable measures in training as you possibly can, and leave as little down to opinion and how you're feeling, because that'll just change. Whereas numbers and ratios and stuff you can't really argue with. So a ratio that I usually work with in my head is, for my kind of level, I'll do like be about 10. My split jerk will be about 10% ish above my power jerk, which will be about 10% above my push press. So whatever I can push press, roughly another 20% would be split jerk, roughly. So I would say that if you're going much above that, then go and work on the like, say if you're split jerking, there's been times where I've been split jerking a significant amount than what my max push press would be, and then say I go way over that 20% mark for myself, like I'll just go and do push press for a phase, drive my strength up and whatever. And then I'll go back to my strict press phase, where even though my strict press is, my split jerk might only be 14% above my push press or whatever. And because I'm so much stronger, it'll just keep climbing. But yeah, or if you get to a point where you're finding a bit of a plateau, you're finding something struggling to climb, go and move to something else for a phase. Like what works best for you mentally and physically? Do you like working in 4-week blocks, 6-week blocks, 8-week blocks? Personally, myself, I like to work in like linear 4-week blocks. Work well for me physically. I feel like I can work progressively harder for that amount of time. Usually 3, maybe sometimes 4. Sometimes I get to a 4th week and I change the variation because I think this is going to be too hard, and I change up the variation and the stimulus. So I might, or whatever. But also, if I go past 5 weeks on the same progression of like one specific exercise, I find it mentally tough. So you can vary. So apply this to your own context and just think where we can think about those ratios. Are the way out from that? Where's the gap? What do you think?
My little take on this is we are training for a sport of strongman. So you want to be good at split jerk for heavy reps on log, and that's what you've got in a comp. That's what you train and focus on as your training block, and that's what you'll get better on. If you've got time to do some push press and strict press work as sort of accessories in your training program, great, do that as well. There's no harm from feeling stronger. It'll probably help you in your rack position. It'll help you with, sort of that force and the load on top of you. Because I know for me, if I was in a jerk, I'd want my push press or my strict press to feel okay as well, because I just feel stronger. But yeah, you're training for a sport. You train, the variation that you're going to use. You get really good at that, and that's how you get your points.
Yeah.
If you were doing any other sport in the world, you would train very sport specific, and it's very, very similar in this sense, isn't it? So.
Yeah, so I think that's a great thing, is like, look at what you're doing for your sport and work backwards from that. If you're going to split jerk at a comp, then when split jerk in training, work backwards from there. So I've got a good specific video up here, because this is the thing that I used to think, right, well, I'm going to use split jerk for anything top single, maybe a top double, maybe even a top triple. But you can't split jerk for reps because it's going to be so fatiguing and so tiring and so much energy expenditure. And then I tried it, and I was doing like sets of 10 split jerk, and the benefits that I got from that, like in terms of like training phases and stuff, was like I learned so much from getting so much volume in whatever. But anyway, I took it to this is an example where I took it into a comp here, England's Strongest Man last year. And for somebody who started out and I was no repping, say, overhead events at strongman comps, like I can remember when I couldn't do like 80 log, couldn't do like 90 ax or whatever. I've turned it into like something that I can reliably get top points at and coming first place outright at England's Strongest Man, 122 for 8.
That's your best set ever, that one.
Yeah, magic.
Silly.
But the point is, I'm split jerking for, it was a set of 75 seconds. So I'm split jerking, a set of 8 or for 75 seconds work. And
one every sort of 9 seconds, then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So don't be afraid to do it. Just because people don't do it, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. So yeah, hopefully that'll give you some inspiration to do it. Like you see the big error that a lot of people will do when they like say, if we're alienating people who are watching this who push press, right? You're saying like, how often do you see it in the gym when people start out, Joe, and the push press technique is terrible, and then they'll build up to like 80% strict, and then just go over to push press when they're over 80%, and then you're never getting that opportunity to build that specific technique. Like you just build
better, are you?
That's it.
Again, it comes back to that specific point. If you're doing something for a sport, you train that, you be specific. But again, if you're warming up loads of strict presses and then going to try and get into a push press at 80%, you're using a completely different movement pattern, which you've not warmed up. It's like, yeah, it's not going to work, is it? You might as well go and do deadlifts.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on to the next section. So we're going to go for, let's take this banner off. So we're going to do, we've got 3 people to look at in terms of technique analysis videos to finish off, Joe. So we're going to go for,
no worries.
Let's go for Jordan Stewart first. So brilliant log presser. So little note on.
Sorry, I'm just getting closer because it's pretty small on my screen.
Yeah,
no, it's bigger. I can make it bigger. Oh, there we go.
So little note on Jordan Stewart. So this is brilliant. So he's been working in the inner circle for the last few months. You work and he's programming. He's following the MST Systems app, and he's and he's absolutely killing it. Like I just love what following his training, watching his training videos. Like he's hitting PBs and whatnot, and he's following the MST programming and then coupling with what we do here. Like looking a bit more in depth on technical feedback and whatnot, and going deeper dives into topics and stuff. So my point is,
first thing, look at that hand position for the pickup. That is exactly what we spoke about. You couldn't get a better example in terms of, you'll see it on both reps. I like that little catch as well. In picking up right at the end of the handle. It's obviously 141 for 2. I presume that's what this one is.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's a personal best. It's a heavy percentage for him. High end of the handle makes the pickup nice and easy, and then the adjustment in that lat position.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Beautiful, yeah. And how that's just cost him no energy at all. It's seamless. Obviously, he's trained that and practiced that, and how snappy it is. It's superb. I like that. Yeah.
So easy gains here.
Couldn't have got a better example there.
Would be what we've said about the clean section, Joe. Would be you see how explosive is on the push press. Have you watched that push press?
I didn't see that. Yeah. Go
Just watch the next push press. Well, watch the clean, and he stays flat-footed.
Flat-footed, yeah.
As he's driving up, and then watch how explosive he is on the push press. So I just think using that little bit of momentary ankle extension is just going to allow him to get that log to the same position, but he's going to be able to spare energy elsewhere. Yeah, and he's going to be able to spare a lot of energy in the upper body specifically that he needs when he's going to be like grinding out that press. If he goes for if he goes for 320 pounds, 330 pounds, he's going to need that upper body with his technique, he needs to spare his upper body as much as possible for that press. And that's a way to do it. And if you think, a lot of people think, oh, well, it's not going to make that much difference using the calves. Like, it's not going to make that much difference. But if you think, you go and max out your calf raise, go and put, go like max yoke and try and stand up on your tiptoes. Like, you'd be shocked at how much you can calf raise compared to, like, say,
a lot more than you can bicep curl. So,
exactly. So yeah, great job. And I think the push press is absolutely fantastic. I love how the
line's good. To be fair, the line's really good. Even though, go on. Sorry.
So a little point on the press here, that there's some good cues flying about that I like. So Shane advocates the head back. Dale 3D strength. He says, what does he say? Head back. Basically, it's similar to what Shane says, but it's just like a slightly different angle. He's basically saying lock out and then head through. So he's basically save the head through until your elbows are locked out. Which again, the subtly different cues work slightly better for different people. But I think the most important thing that kind of is all encompassing for these things said by Shane and Dale and other people's different takes on it is what we should be doing, which I haven't really thought about until recently, until like looking into depth into weightlifters. And you look at when you're jerking, I always talk about vertical bar path or whatever. And for most people, it really, really improves most people and it makes sense. But if you think about it, Joe, right, look at me from the side here. Right, imagine I've got this little thing racked here.
Yeah, got you, mate. Yeah, I can see you.
Right. So I'm starting here. So I have to start here. But even if I get my head back and face up or whatever, like I'm starting here, like where my collarbone is roughly. Yeah. My lockout position to find that weightless position that where my joints are stacked is here.
Back, yeah.
Yeah. So if you draw a straight line, where's the line going from that rack? Imagine it's log. Imagine it's log. Log's out here. From there to there. Is it straight up?
No.
No, it's ever so slightly back in a perfectly straight line. Yeah. So I think that's a cue that I promote. I always like, I often say to people who are kind of grinding out a little bit in front like that, I always say, right, just imagine you're trying to punch the log behind your head. Yeah. And that very often improves people's speed via improving position. But if you think of that now logically, instead of thinking, right, perfectly vertical bar path up from the side to ever so slightly back, these brilliant cues that Shane's saying about head back and Dale's what the cue that he says, they're already taken care of. Yeah, because to achieve this bar path of starting here and finishing there, your face is already taken care of. Your head's already, it has to be out of the way. Otherwise, you're going to chin yourself. It sounds, obviously, it's so simple. But I suppose me and Shane were talking about it the other day when we were recording the podcast. And it's like kind of the brilliant thing about what we do is like we see a way of a solution to a problem, but we've both got successful ways at, a slightly different slant on delivery. So you take a sample of, say, 10 people and we sit in a room, and some of the stuff that you said today, Joe, absolutely brilliant. And the way that you cue something might suit somebody's better than what Shane says, what I said, and equally. So if we're providing a few different solutions, I suspect from what I've just said that some people will message me and just say, "Oh my God, that makes sense. I've been thinking about this for so long. It's convenient, whatever." And then there'll be other people I say that to, and I've said it to, I'm blue in the face, and they just don't get it. And then they put the feedback in True Coach. Like, yeah, people put the feedback in, and I watched a video that Shane put out the other day, and he said do this, and it feels well better. And I'm like, well, at first that's what you kind of think, but that's where you just got to like provide like many different ways of looking at the same problem, because it's not the fact that one cue is better than the other. It's just the interpretation of the receiver is going to be slightly different. So if we can provide these few different things and, you know, play about with them, I think it's so valuable. So yeah, great job. What's he doing on his strict press here? So 125 for 2.
Interesting.
So I'm going to assume that he's doing his strict press here as like a brute strength improving exercise to improve his main lift of his log clean and press. Yeah. So a thing that, so I'm not going to, like, the overhead stability looks sketchy, doesn't it? But when he does his main, like say his main lift, the log clean and press, it looks fine. He's going to get a down command at a comp, isn't he? But I would say that he could. That looks great, by the way. That finishing position, that looks brilliant. But I would say that spending a bit more time developing the overhead position is going to be invaluable, because if you find you imagine now, Joe, you hit your. It doesn't matter if you hit a 130 log and you find that position where your joints are stacked. You could hold that for
hold it all day, yeah.
You could hold it for 10 seconds.
10 seconds, yeah, of course.
Yeah. But so my point is that if you can do that with the muscle mass that you've got, like you're basically using your skeleton. And I think
it isn't a muscular. You've used your muscular system, haven't you, by that phase.
So you're finding that position that where the joints are stacked. So I would say, like, just practice holding that a little bit longer overhead. And if you're scared of it, like stealing from your numbers a little bit or making your training session a little bit harder, I like just doing the last rep of each set for 2 to 3 seconds or 3 to 4 seconds or whatever. Or at least maybe like one big set per workout where you think, right, my last set of my working set, I'm going to hold it for 10 seconds before I dump it or whatever. And what you'll find,
go on.
And what you'll find as you do this, like, you can see that he holds it brilliantly here, but you can see that if he videoed exactly from the side, and I challenge you to do this next session, video from the side. Let's see if those joints are stacked when the weight's overhead, and I can see that. It's pretty good. It is pretty good. Yeah. But you can see that his arms are like
slightly in front, aren't they? Maybe.
Yeah, and it looks like you basically that degree out in front, and your triceps, your delts are under tension. Yeah, you find that sweet spot where your joints are stacked over midfoot, and you can chill. Like, your joints are just stacked on top of each other. So, like as a weightlifter would say, trust your skeleton. Yeah, but the problem is with a lot of us strongman guys, a lot of muscle mass, a lot of time, whatever. Like, you might actually find that it's really difficult to achieve this true position. So you get so used to holding the weight there as your lockout position. This is the thing that I've been working on massively with Kane Francis with his overhead stuff. Like, he just couldn't hold his lockout. His pressing strength was incredible, but he just couldn't could barely get his arms overhead. So he just did loads and loads and loads of like thoracic mobility, upper spine mobility stuff, like shoulder flexion stuff, so he could actually get that position, and then just kind of stayed light with it. I can't remember if he did that England's online qualifying. He messaged me saying he did like a 40 kilo axle PB because he'd 30 or 40 kilo axle PB. It was ridiculous. Yeah. But the point was you're already strong enough to. Most of us are already strong enough to lift a little bit heavier than we already are doing on log. So a lot of us can just do with opening up certain positions that will let us express this in the context of. Anyway, we're going off on one, but hopefully you got some stuff that you can apply there, and let us know if you find them helpful.
Yeah, so.
The next ones. So we're going to go Andy Gibbs. We've got I think this is his 130 PB, actually. Very strong.
Yeah, 130 kilos. All right, let's have a look. Play it again.
I think it'll just be on loop.
Yeah.
Lovely pick. Lovely pick. He's doing your pick and hop, isn't he?
Yeah. I need to watch it again. Maybe one more. Almost seems like there's a little bit of a. Let me watch it again. Yeah, not better before actually. I'm just saying maybe the balance. I don't know if it looks like the weight of the log. It looks a bit further forward on that pickup.
Yeah.
You know, when
So
I'm picking it up.
thing that screams out at me here as a positional thing is like he's doing kind of the opposite of what we talked about before about he's picking up narrow and then moving his feet out like there. Whereas actually, if he cleans from that position, he'll have a quicker transfer, and then therefore he'll feel a bit stronger in the rack when he begins the dip. So I'd say, yeah, take your. It's not the pick, is it? It's he's picking it up around the same width. Is when he's hopping up, he's moving his feet.
Moving in, yeah.
Maybe
that's what I mean about the balance a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe that's a habit.
The pickups
or something.
The pickup's good. Like it's looks super light. That's good. And then he's just hopping in a little bit there.
But I think if he hops up and not in, he's going to have a fantastic transition further.
That's it, vertical rather than inwards.
Yeah.
Trying to keep his feet in the same position as they are on the pickup. Using that sort of momentum. Because that looks about shoulder width there. Then he's gone very narrow, cleans it in very narrow, back to shoulder width. Presses from
pretty
there.
Good, actually. It's pretty good.
Oh, yeah, it's very good.
And again, I'd say the same thing to Andy here that we just said about developing that true overhead stability, because you might get some refs. He's got the down command there, and that's all that matters. So he's hit his PB. But you might get some refs that are waiting for him to get his head through, and if he's not if he's not comfortable in that position, that should be really, really easy. Like getting his head through in the gap once he's finished, once he's locked out, then.
The other thing that I think, I might be totally off here, but if you on this clean here, he doesn't fully go into that squat position, which is fine. He doesn't have to. And the clean's good, but I'm thinking, if he's being aspirational, he wants to be cleaning 150 logs, say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that technique there going to transfer to a 150 log clean? It looks good, to be fair, and I bet it won't be far off.
So you saying maybe try in training, maybe try hips a little bit lower and see how that feels?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, he's getting a lot of power from that position, considering he doesn't actually go that low. It's very impressive.
Like
I wouldn't be able to. I have to drop a lot lower into my squat to produce that much power. But I'm just thinking sort of further along the line.
It's like for you, you're very good at your stone technique where you're dropping into the hole and accelerating out and almost cleaning a log like that. Whereas somebody like me, like I've got good at
you don't drop anywhere near as deep as me.
Like my hip's quite high, probably a bit higher than Andy's actually.
Yeah, definitely.
But playing to my strengths, like I've always been a bit more explosive, like with hip extension than I have been with, say, squat strength. Whereas knowing Andy really well, he's less explosive, but really, really strong. Like his leg strength and his squat strength is strong. So that may actually suit him. If you think of think of somebody like Hicksy's clean, for instance, where he sinks really low and uses that ridiculous leg strength that he's got. Like we're seeing, like putting a 400 kilo safety bar squat into.
Mad, isn't it? Yeah.
So
that's what I'm just thinking further down the line. But
and if he was going to try this, just putting some in maybe after the session, if you drop back down to say 75% of your top set and do 3 triples or even 3 doubles, 3 triples with the the normal technique, or alternate. Do say something like 6 triples at 70-75%, and just alternate in between. Do first set of triples, do your normal technique, and then try the hips a little bit lower and see if you can get a little bit more exposure, more power. But yeah, the dip looks pretty good. You can see the elbows, considering the rack looks really good, you can see the elbows drop subtly. So I would suspect that he could probably tidy his dip and drive up a little bit, and probably keep his head facing a bit further backwards. Try that cue of punching back. And another thing as well, even though we promote it more the other, or I promote it more the other way, the benefits of not wearing elbow sleeves to learn that rack position. You can actually see in Andy's case, it's something that is massively improved. Like his rack position looks brilliant on this. But I would be thinking if we had to get him from 130 on this setup to say 300 pounds, 136 or whatever, and we had a really short time, I'd say get maybe some single ply neoprene elbow sleeve, so you're getting a little bit of support, but it's not stealing your rack position. And try some wrist wraps. Right, just think the with me wrist wraps, like I don't use, like my wrists feel really, really strong on every variation. It's probably the only area of my body where I've never had a kind of injury. But the thing with my wrist, when I put my wrist wraps on, any given rack position, it's almost like a kind of, I don't know, any rack position feels lighter on any kind of overhead lift. So it's not that my wrists feel like they need support. It's actually just that kind of global support that you're getting. And a simple way to think about it is if like all your joints in your body, you're expending energy having to stabilize those joints in any kind of movement that you do, unless you're like lying down or whatever. So if we can remove the kind of stability requirements from our body by using equipment and kit, then take advantage of it. So just put supporting your wrist wrap, so you're having to produce less energy to keep your wrist stable. So these are fine margins, and that's a very good lift, mate. So well done.
Very good.
So final one. Who have we got here? So let's have a look at. Can you see this one, Joe?
Yeah, got sound on this one.
Oh, why have we got sound? Oh, turn sound off. Let's have a look at this. So this is Dan Clark.
Play it one more time for me, mate.
All right, okay.
I think the thing that shouts out at me straight away is the press.
Love that clean power, by the way.
Yeah, the press looked a little bit out in front.
Yeah, let's have a look at this clean. So that clean power there.
Yeah, loads.
Right. This is right in terms of, I'm talking about power, right? This is magic. So copy this. This is fantastic. This is like no knee sleeves, no neoprene shorts to bounce out of. This is just explosive power, legit. Yeah.
Great triple extension, isn't it?
Yeah. Needs to work on the positioning and controlling it, because as he's receiving it,
isn't there?
yeah, he's staggering it. So you want to learn how, and that's why it's so skillful.
What shoes has he got on there? Could he, maybe it's a pair of ollie shoes will just help him land that a little bit better.
Maybe. If they're not ollie shoes, like if they are ollie shoes, maybe taking an ollie shoes with this slightly higher heel, or working on your ankle dorsiflexion range of motion. For Joe's suggestion, but for the thing here, as he starts the dip here, can you see it? Can you see it subtly? I can see his heel popping up at the bottom of the dip before he starts the drive. Yeah?
Yeah, his feet aren't flat, are they?
So as he begins the drive, he's driving, his force he's producing is going through his toes, and he's like kind of mid-foot, his heels off the ground. We want to drive through begin the drive, squat, deadlift, whatever. You want to be driving through mid-foot. You want to, tripod foot. So think of the foot as a tripod, where the base of your big toe, the base of your little toe, and your heel are creating a tripod effect
Contact with the
where you're
floor.
kind of equally squeezing power through, if you will. So you can see if people's heels are lifting before they begin the drive, you're leaking power. So fix that. You might be able to fix that just by a motor controller, just from me pointing it out to you. But if you feel like what a lot of people find is that in flats, to maintain that to maintain that flat foot, what they have to do is hinge at the hips and sacrifice the torso angle. So you see a lot of people that they'll lift in flats and they'll kind of do that hingy log press and then have to strict press it out after they've applied the leg drive. So that's why I'm a massive advocate of lifting shoes for people as a performance just a performance enhancer. Really, they're just giving that thing that Joe said about maintaining the vertical torso. It's just giving you an easier job of doing that. So what else have we got? So he's keeping his head back nicely. So he's giving himself an easier task to kind of because he's keeping his head back so well and he's maybe punching back or whatever. You can see that he's controlling the rack position really, really well. Like as he drives into the log's not rolling forward excessively.
Yeah, no, it's spot on that.
But you can see that maybe, like, I'm not sure how heavy this is in terms of percentage, but put another 10, 20% on that. Again, I'd want to see him developing that overhead stability. He looks like he's poking his head through at the end, but it's almost just like a gesture. It doesn't look like home. Yeah, you want to make this position here. You want to make that overhead position feel like home. Well, not just like that. That looks pretty good. Don't get me wrong, but I'd say,
but it's there for 0.1 seconds, isn't it?
Yeah, I would actually say that if he went to hold this for 10 seconds, the first couple of seconds, I suspect what it would do, he'd find it pretty tough, and then he'd probably punch back a little bit more and almost feel like he's
that
reached
true position.
Exactly, Joe. And it almost, before you found it, it almost feels like you're reaching behind you, and it feels ridiculous. Until you find a sweet spot where almost like you feel like you can switch your muscles off to an extent, yeah? And I would say split jerk, training the split in isolation and getting
the recovery. I think you'd benefit from some jerk recoveries.
Yeah, you can see that look how short that foot is.
For the front foot, yeah.
He's really relying on stepping back. Right, find something else, Joe. I'm gonna get one more.
I think the recovery, actual footwork of which one to recover first, would be valuable as well. Because just play it again and then look at the recovery. There's quite a few steps going on there.
Yeah.
No, you're not playing it again here.
Oh, is it not? Is it not playing? Sorry.
No. If you just look at the recovery in terms of the number of steps, Josh will be able to tell you a lot better than me. Obviously, he's a split jerker, but I mean, what have we got? Well, that one's better. That one's better than the second one. The second one, I think there might be 4 steps possibly in the recovery. Maybe not 3, but it could be a little bit snappier on that. This video, I watched this video yesterday. It's great.
So we'll put it on because this is relevant.
Your feet over the line, and then your hips over the line, and your shoulders.
This will teach you about the recovery.
And we want to have our torso should stay in that position. So imagine there's something either side of you that's stopping you moving. So your first we get a nice straight dip, but also then when we do the split jerk, we want our body to stay there over that line. Obviously the bar is now over the line, head, shoulders, hips, and also the back knee, so that we're nice and stable here, because we don't want to lean forward or back. Everything stays over that line. We keep our center of gravity. We don't want that bar moving away from that center point. So then we want our heel to the back to that line, and our toe to that line should be exactly the same. So that shows us that we've got that nice straight dip here. And then we'll recover from a jerk. We want to go front foot back to that line, back foot back to that line. I say FBI, front foot, back foot, idiot. If you don't do it, then you know where you're at.
So I think that view of the line as well is
exactly.
It's fantastic. So simple in terms of the spacing for the front foot and the back foot should be the same. I've never ever thought of it like that. And I think when I've done split jerks in the past, I'm thinking back to it thinking, no way was the spacing between the front foot and the back foot the same from my midline.
Yeah,
it's a great
and
cue.
she's just that thing FBI front foot, back foot idiot. So people, you'll see people big error with split jerkers. They'll reach with that front foot and then chase it forward as they recover. And I won't go into why you should step back, but just do it. And then this video I saw yesterday from Tarokity. Give him a follow. And this is just the simplest way to learn your ideal your ideal foot position on split jerk.
Our toes. After this, we will kneel down and we will draw the line in front of our knees.
That's brilliant. I'm going to go and do some split jerking tomorrow. There's my knees.
After this, we will make a step forward. In this position, these two parts of our body should be parallel to each other. Not like this, not like that. Parallel. Move your dominant leg forward. And
Superb.
when you are done, stand up. This is your individual split position. On the toes.
So brilliant. So try those drills. So have a look at one of my latest Instagram things to watch it again. The thing on how to split jerk and the where your leg should be, and then to measure it exactly with a piece of chalk, just follow that what Tarokity said. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. So thanks very much for listening. So this is Josh Lancaster from British Strongman Coaching, Joe Daglish. I'm going to put a link in description for Joe's 6-week trial program with Joe. And there's also going to be a 14-day free trial for British Strongman Coaching in a Circle, where you're going to be able to ask questions yourself and get them answered in depth each week and be part of a community. Thanks, Joe.